Hi, I'm Ann Miles, and I am reading my book, Sawfish, today for you. I'm going to read a little bit from the beginning, two sections, and here we go. Chapter 1, Louisville, Kentucky, 2001. When Sarah got to her studio, she started the coffee maker. The dark scent of coffee filled the room like incense. She poured herself a cup and walked slowly around her sculpture, considering it. The tall form dominated the space, hidden under its plastic shroud. 3 days a week, she went to classes. But as a senior, Sarah had 2 full days to explore her art, sculpting. Sarah stood on tiptoe and unsealed the plastic, letting it fall. The writhing column swept up from a copper base. It morphed, at first craggy and jagged, before it rose like a tempest. It flowed, becoming a creature of grace and stern visage. A fire elemental? No, maybe wind. Something with heat and light and passion. I'm still discovering you. Sarah frowned at the unfinished face and set her coffee down, retrieving her tool belt. She began carving detail. A violin piece, a caprice, floated through her mind, unbidden. Paganini's music often haunted her, the complicated strains sounding in her skull as if she were microchipped with her own private radio. Images unrolled in her mind. She saw herself smashing the piece and starting over fresh. The scene hit her full force. She stopped, made a fist, breathed. The desire to destroy the sculpture was so strong. The impulse would pass. This urge to destroy alternated with its opposite extreme when she knew her piece was perfect. Those days were really scary. She might decide to quit before she truly finished. She would fire the clay, and the piece would remain frozen forever. She would have to live with it, like an accusation. Dangerous. What if I can't do this? The doubt surfaced again. She ignored it and pressed on. Once she got started, everything would be okay. When one of her pieces fired, Sarah just prayed it didn't explode. A sculpture might transform 100 ways into something others couldn't read. The vision could die, unrealized as the process destroyed it. Sometimes it did. Maybe that was why she loved working with clay. It had to pass through a fire and survive. Sarah chewed her lip. Dr. Carroll said she shouldn't pin all her hopes on this one sculpt. Yeah, right. It only stood as her final, the capstone of her portfolio. It was the difference between working in Hollywood and teaching third graders how to make pinch pots. No pressure. Nope, none at all. Sarah really hadn't finished anything since the accident. Oh, she'd submitted work, but it was substandard, not finished. The head of the program, Polly, had been patient, but Sarah knew she wouldn't even graduate if she didn't present something exceptional. Marilla, screaming, her face contorted with rage and anguish. Sarah gasped. Her twin's image flashed before her eyes, obscuring everything else. So vivid. You don't deserve a life. It should have been you. Selfish. Her chest tightened. It felt heavy. She focused on her breath. In and out. In and out. Stay calm. I won't think about her. Not now. I can choose. Dr. Carroll's instructions floated up. Listen to the music in your mind. She focused, tuned everything else out. If you can't finish a piece, you can't succeed as an artist. Would you like fries with that? I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Just start. Don't think me, just throw. You'll only hurt the ball club. Sarah opened her eyes and began again. She let her mind go blank. Her breathing quieted. She dragged a stepladder over, climbing to reach the upper portion of the towering figure. She should focus on the face. The whirling cone was becoming a person. Its hair needed to float. She picked, prodded, and picked again. A small brush flicked away crumbs. Nothing ever really matched what was in her head. But she was just beginning. Should she add another media to get the right effect? Wire? Maybe spun glass. She'd come back. Try again. She'd get it right. She'd get it done. Sarah set her tools down and stared at the form. He needed a name, a strong name, something mystic, powerful like him. Storm King. What was that? Norse? And probably the name of every villain in those stupid movies Peter likes. Till I come up with something better, Storm King it is. You remind me of a tornado. She covered him with the shroud. A little part of her rebelled, a voice that urged her to continue working, to stay. No. She had enough done. Tomorrow would come. In the meantime, the Storm King rested. Maybe I'll sleep tonight too. Dane pushed hair from his eyes and yanked up yet another weed. Neat rows of vegetables, flowers, and herbs stretched across the field. He inspected the leek in front of him. It wasn't as large as it should be this late in the season. Tune bells chimed softly, swaying in the wind. Their precious flowers needed to be harvested for oils. He still hated taking the delicate cups and leaving the stalks naked. Tune bell scent reminded him of his mother, her eyes, her laughter. He moved to the next plant, pushing her image away. Weeding was tedious, but it gave him the chance to feel the wind on his face. The ground beneath Dane's feet gave slightly, soft with late summer rain. Birds sang, a symphony rising and falling as kinglets asked and answered questions only they understood. Dane planned as he worked, measuring the number of blossoms he would need to create the oils and infusions for his varnish. He moved to the next row. In the distance, a jackdaw cried. The forest behind his rambling hold stretched up a rising slope. His was an island of order on the edge of the Hyatt Grove, the fabled forest of giant trees. Dane sensed darkness flowing through the stone walls surrounding the property, and the hedges enclosing his garden plot, reaching into his home. He raised his head. The jackdaw had sounded a warning, a harbinger of battle. Slowly, Dane lifted his eyes. A dark bird, its gaze fixed on him, perched on the hedge, eerily silent. Jackdaws are never silent. Dane's breath caught. The bird waited, still and soundless. Dane shook his head. His real work was waiting. He would not pay heed to superstition. He threaded his way back to the cottage. As he approached, Dane heard his gnomish guardian, Pezik, rumbling in the kitchen. She clanged pots and stirred something over the hearth. Pezik would be grumpy. She always was this early. Dane grinned and pushed through the half door. Avoiding the new loot build, I see, Pezik said. She pointed at the mud he was tracking in. That garden is mine to tend, and you know it. She clucked and bustled over, poking him out of his overshoes and swooping them up. She herded him into a chair at the wide planked table. Pezik clanked a metal plate before him, filled a mug with goat's milk from an earthen pitcher on the sideboard and set it down with a thump, punctuating her disapproval. Women's work, she muttered with an angry sniff. Her bulk, swathed in homespun, rounded the table. She stepped on her stool and settled on her chair. I've cared for that plot since your poor mama and pa passed, and I've cared for you. You need to work the shop. See to your business, lad, and I will see to mine." Her spoon waved admonishingly. She stabbed at her eggs and shoveled them bite in. Her blue conical hat bent like a wagging finger reproaching him. Guilt is the domain of women, especially no mothers, Dane thought. "I expect you're ready for the inlay. I'll have the essence finished this evening. I'm brewing the base." Pesek nodded toward the hearth. "I heard jackdaws this morning," Dane said, changing the subject. "Might want to get the goats in early and gather the hens." "Aye, bears are about, and they will thieve my fowls." Pesek's brogue thickened when she worried. "I'll see to it." The fire crackled in the large hearth, its cheerful warmth chasing away the morning chill. "We're likely to have a visitor soon," Dane said. Gnomes were very superstitious, and he could not resist tweaking Pesek after she'd been so bossy. Her eyes widened. "You saw one on the roof?" she squeaked in consternation. "Was it on the chimney?" "No, it was on the hedge," Dane said. He fished an acorn from his pocket and placed it on the table in front of her, tapping it. "Death will not visit us this day, Dima." Pesek blinked at the endearment and the acorn, her lips softening. She picked up the acorn and turned it over in her hands, nodding. "The Storm King is in control, I know. He lets the great big trees grow from something so small." She blinked and put the acorn in her pocket, suddenly businesslike. "Enough extra to do with the bears about, but I suppose I can air the quilts and—" She tapped the table thoughtfully. "A pie. We'll need a pie for a visitor. Who could it be?" She squinted, suddenly suspicious. "Have you paid the tax yet? I don't fancy entertaining a cantor. You'll have to prepare. Hide the loot." Dane laughed and rose to scrape his plate into the scrap pail. "I have the gold from the last cabinets we sold. It's enough. I'll pay it today. I have to go to town and pick up supplies. Don't worry, Dima." The gnome nodded, shooing him from the dishes. "Enough of that. Get along with you now. You'll be hard-pressed to finish this order as it is. I don't know what you were thinking promising this loot so quickly." She herded him toward the door. "You'd think you could just sing the loot into being to make such promises." Dane stopped and stiffened in the doorway. The song was not a topic he took lightly, ever. He couldn't, and she knew it. He turned to look at Pesek. Sheepish, she met his gaze. "Get on with you. I'll take care of the steading till you return tomorrow." Her voice softened, less gruff. As if drawn by his thoughts, a ghostly form blurred into focus near the hearth. A small woman with short blonde hair blinked in the sunlight. Dane's eyes fastened on her, the first of many fae who would flicker forth as he crafted this new loot. He'd learned as a boy not to be surprised by them. Sometimes many appeared, especially when he and his father worked together. Other times there were only a few. They never remained long. "It's begun," he whispered softly. Pesek whirled in response, her eyes lighting on the figure. "That one's barely formed," she said. "Hardly good for a chat." Dane laughed at the gnome's disappointment as the fae touched the table and dissipated. "I'm sure there will be more. This loot must be special." He headed toward his workshop, leaving Pesek muttering to herself. Cabinets, tables, and chairs usually filled Dane's workshop. Today, he was plying his clandestine trade. An order had been received. Dane would fill it out of sight of the conclave. He was Daewin, in hiding and untried, but Daewin nonetheless. "We serve the Storm King first," Pa would say. The transformation of their workshop felt like ritual. Special tools, Braces, holdfast, molds, and frame saws emerged from hidden nooks under the floorboards or secret compartments in the cabinets. Essences brewed from mystic varnishes, glues, and dyes lined a small shelf. Wood curls pillowed his work from the night before. Dane checked the form for imperfections and set it aside. He swept the shavings into a small pile and threw them into the fire. His eyes wandered to the narrow leather box above the hearth. He removed the scrolls within. One he unrolled, a map. Tune bells connected him to his mother. The contents of this box brought his father to mind. Dane traced spidering lines of ink. The smell of pipe tobacco enveloped him. Pa's voice rumbled in Dane's mind, full of travel stories that even now seemed fantastic. He re-rolled the map and replaced it, touching the other scroll as little as possible. He drew out gold from a side compartment. The tax must be paid, or he would indeed become a target for the Cantor. Okay. So that's my reading, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. How did you choose sculpting as your protagonist's art? Do you sculpt at all? Actually, my daughter is the sculptor in our family, and she's amazing. She was in high school in the International Baccalaureate art program and had to do a lot of sculpting. So I learned about it from her. I am a graphic artist and I did go to art school, but sculpting was not even a choice. It was just, that's what Sarah was. So, let's see. I loved your book. Did you base them on a real person or people? Sort of. I was talking about this actually with my husband before I came on. Sarah is a lot like me, but a little bit like my daughter as well. I think it's a good mix. I don't really have any other real people that I know that the characters are based on. Jax was based on my dog, who is a Shih Tzu, and he is a gnome like Pezek. You meet him later in the book. And there are several characters who became the actors that I had chosen for them when I was writing. So I will tell you that Gilles de Cleland is Tommy Lee Jones, the young one. And that's kind of the only real people I can think of. So. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, you can find my book at Amazon and at Bookshop. And if you go to my website, sorrowfish.com, you can find the links to both of those there. My website actually has a lot of really cool stuff on it. You can see things about the characters and things about the world. And then you can see a lexicon, which is cool, which you will need. I don't know if you noticed while I was reading, there's a lot of words in there that are kind of weird. So, and then I also have some video games, and so lots of fun stuff. So sorrowfish.com is where you would go to find my book and about my book. And hopefully I will have another book in the series ready soon. So thank you.
Okay, that was great.